Hey guys, Mr. Simpson here. And so what I want to do in this video is kind of go through some strategies for answering stimulus-based multiple choice questions. Basically, some of those more difficult questions that we're seeing on the quizzes, I notice a lot of students are kind of struggling with them. So I want to give you some strategies on how to answer those a little bit better. So let's go ahead and dive on in. So when we look at these types of questions, what we're talking about, these stimulus-based questions, are questions like you see here that you get a prompt of some form or another. Maybe it's a quote, a primary source excerpt, a chart, a map, a graph, something like that, that you're kind of looking at that's going to direct your attention. That's why we call it a stimulus-based question. It makes you focus in. Okay. And then you'll see your answer choice here, and then probably your multiple choice responses and stuff like that. And so probably from seventh grade up until now, you've been taught a lot of strategies on how to answer these. Of some of the common things that kind of were taught in social studies is you make sure you understand the question first before you go in and try to answer it. So, or what some teachers will teach, can you answer the question? Like, do you know what it's asking you about before you go into reading this excerpt, looking at the answer choices, everything else? So what I'm going to teach you is to really just make sure you start by reading the question and know what it's asking you about before you start diving into the quote or looking at the answer choices or anything like that. So let's go ahead and practice this out real quick. So the question here says the views expressed in the excerpt are best seen as evidence of which of the following trends in the middle colonies. So right off the bat, the thing we should make sure is that we know that we're talking about the views expressed in the excerpt, which is this right here, are best seen as evidence of the trends in the middle colonies. Another way to say that is the defining characteristics of the middle colonies. What are the things that we talked about in the lecture videos that describes the middle colonies as a whole? So some of the things that we know about the middle colonies is that they have a very diverse ethnic background, people from all different nationalities from Europe living in the middle colonies. So people from not just England primarily, but from other European countries as well: Ireland, Scotland, Germany, France, the Netherlands. Um, Different groups are living in the middle colonies. Also, we know that the middle colonies not didn't just have agriculture as their economy, they had both agriculture and industry and trade and shipping. It was called a mixed economy or a middle economy. Another thing that we know about the middle colonies is that they had religious diversity, meaning that there wasn't just one primary religious group like in the New England colonies with Puritans exclusively, or Maryland with just Catholics mainly. The middle colonies had a mix of different religions. So there were Puritans, there were Anglicans, there were just general Protestants, there were Catholics, there were people who were Jewish, and there were some people who were non-believers as well. So the middle colonies really are what we kind of, they're like the middle of the road and everything. Very diverse, uh, a mixed economy. They have a lot of different religions, a lot of different ethnic backgrounds. So make sure we know those things. So the question is asking us specifically about the middle colonies. Think about, what do I know about the middle colonies? Find those in your notes and then go from there when you're encountering a question like this. Make sure you know what the question is asking you about before you go into that quote. Okay, so now it says the views expressed in the quote or in the excerpt are best seen as evidence of the trends of the middle colony. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the answer choices here in a moment that kind of best reflect the trends of the middle colonies. Okay, so let's look at the quote. We know about the middle colonies: there's religious diversity, there's ethnic diversity, there's a mixed economy. Okay, so the quote says, the humble, meek, merciful, just, pious, and devout souls everywhere are of one religion, and when death has taken off the mask, meaning when they die, they will know one another, though the diverse liveries, or the way they lived, they wore here make them strangers. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this quote, this question in detail with the answer choices. But I want you to pay attention to one thing. We talked about the middle colonies as this religiously diverse area where there's multiple religions in the area. But here in this quote, William Penn, who's the founder of the Pennsylvania colony, by the way, a middle colony, says here that everywhere are of one religion. And so this quote kind of contradicts what we know about the Middle Colonies. So let's kind of look at the answer choices real quick, and we're going to see this in a little more detail. So in order to answer these questions, when we have this moment where the quote kind of doesn't reflect what we know about history, is we've got to use our inferencing. And this is a great formula that is kind of taught during in a lot of reading classes and English classes, is that when we're inferencing and using our inferencing skills, which is the skills you need to answer these types of questions, we have to do two things. We have to combine the text clues on one hand with our background knowledge in order to answer the questions. Okay, so just like we did a moment ago, we looked at what we knew about the Middle Colonies, that background, and then we looked at the text clues and we see that there's this disconnect, this paradox kind of conflict in what we know about the Middle Colonies versus what's written in that quote. Okay, so just please be thinking about this. Maybe write this in your notes. Inferencing equals text clues plus background knowledge. Please know in your brain, I've got to do both of these in order to answer these questions on the test. Okay, so let's look at the question in more detail. So here's the question as a whole as you saw it on the quiz. And as we said, we focused in on this specific part. It's asking us to look at the answer choices A, B, C, and D and see which one is the best evidence of the trends of the Middle Colonies. So the views expressed in the excerpt are best seen as evidence of which of the following trends in the Middle Colonies. Okay, and so we know that there's a conflict and a contradiction because here it says that souls everywhere are of one religion, but in the Middle Colonies we know that they're different. So one thing that I saw a lot of students doing is a lot of students chose answer choice A because of what it says right here. Same religion, different countries. And here's a problem with this. We know that the Middle Colonies don't have all the same religion, but a lot of people come from different countries. So answer choice A is only half right. And sometimes you're going to see an answer choice that seems right, but it's not the completely fully right answer. And answer choice A is not fully right because they're not all the same religion, even though answer choice in the quote, it talks about they're of one religion. Remember, we've got to use our background knowledge plus our text clues together to really come to a conclusion. And we're looking for the one as best evidence of the trends in the Middle Colonies. And we know that the trends, this key word here, of the Middle Colonies are that they have religious diversity, not the same religion. Okay, so let's look at answer choice B. It says settlers rarely coexisted peacefully with immigrants from other nations. Well, we know that the Middle Colonies had a lot of people from different nations living in them. So that can't be true. Let's look at answer choice C. And also, this quote doesn't even mention other immigrants and stuff like that necessarily. So answer choice B just can't be right. It's an absolutely wrong, so we can just cross it out. Let's look at answer choice C. Settlers incorporated Native Americans into society through intermarriage. That might sound familiar to you because that's talking about the French and the Dutch who would marry Native Americans in order to secure their relationships with Native Americans and make sure their fur trade was thriving and they can make money off of it. Also, does this quote even discuss Native Americans? That answer is no. So you can cross that out. So sometimes you can see ones that are absolutely wrong and cross those out. Whenever you get those opportunities to cross out two, like we did with B and C right away, it's perfect because then you're down to A and D, which is a 50-50 shot. And we've already kind of discredited A, so the answer choice has to be D based on the trends of the Middle Colonies. So answer choice D says settlers came from different countries. That's true of the Middle Colonies. That's a trend. And practiced many different religions. That's also a trend. So what we actually see here is that this question kind of had nothing to do with the quote, and the quote itself is what we call a distractor. The quote was put here to see if you really knew the background information about the Middle Colonies. And that's why it's there. Sometimes this is what test creators do. And I chose this because I knew that this one question right here, plus this underlined portion, a lot of students would want to pick A because we're taught a lot of times in our English classes, and not incorrectly, that look for the text clues and just focus on that. Where is it in the text? And while that's true, it does mention same religion, but we know that the middle colonies didn't have the same religion. They were from different countries and they practiced different religions. And so that's why answer choice D is the correct answer for that question. And this is how you have to think about these questions. They're not just simple as who, what, when, where, why type questions. They're mostly going to be how type questions. Another way to reword this question would be, how do the answer choices reflect the trends of the middle colonies? I'm pretty sure if it was written that way, a lot of students would have gotten this right more often than not. Or maybe if this quote was completely removed, a lot of students would have gotten it right. But you've got to really just pay attention to those text clues and focus in on your background knowledge. I hope this was helpful. I hope you kind of gleaned something from it and got something from it. Just please remember, read these questions carefully. Make sure you know what they're discussing and what they're talking about, and then go in and try to answer them using your background knowledge, using those text clues, and figuring out which of these answer choices is not the correct answer choice, just like we did here in answer choice D in not choosing answer choice A. Hope you have a great day. I will see you all later. Bye.